Welcome to the 2025-2026 Gifted and Talented Awareness Session.
This session is posted on the district website at www.seisd.net. Click Departments, click Planning and Instruction, click Gifted and Talented, and then click the video called GT Awareness Session. During this presentation, we will talk about what does being gifted and talented mean? What are characteristics of a gifted child? We'll give an overview of gifted program services for our district. We'll go through the screening and identification process for this year, and we'll talk about how potential GT students are tested. What does it mean to be gifted and talented according to the state of Texas? As can be found in the Texas State Plan for the Education of Gifted and Talented Students, a gifted and talented student means children and youth with outstanding talent who perform or show the potential for performing at remarkably high levels of accomplishment when compared with others of their age, experience, or environment. These children and youth exhibit high performance capability in intellectual, creative, and/or artistic areas, possess an unusual leadership capacity, or excel in specific academic fields. To continue the definition, they require services or activities not ordinarily provided by the schools. Outstanding talents are present in children and youth from all cultural groups, across all economic states, and in all areas of human endeavor. So based on the definition we just looked at, who are gifted and talented kids? They are often not who you think. We sometimes think that only the bright and compliant student is the GT student, thinking about the ones who are perfectly behaved with excellent grades, who always raise their hand. That's not always the case. GT kids can be English language learners, special education students, they can be receiving 504 services, or they can be students who are underachievers. We need to open our eyes and cast a wide net with our GT nominations, and the testing will help determine who is actually in need of GT services. Let's take a look at some common characteristics in GT kids, specifically in young children. These are characteristics that might be observed by parents as they take care of their young children at home. Infants may get fussy if facing one direction for too long. As infants, they might appear alert and may need less sleep than children that are not GT. Potential GT young children frequently reach milestones such as walking and first speech earlier than average. They may speak late, but then speak in complete sentences. Additional GT traits in young children may include a strong desire to explore, investigate, and master their environment, which might include opening up cabinets and taking things apart. They might master toys and games very early and then discard them out of boredom. They might be very active, but their activity has a purpose, not to be confused with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They can distinguish between reality and fantasy, and questions about Santa or the Tooth Fairy might come much earlier than with other children. As potential GT children continue to get older, some other cognitive traits that are common include being very observant about their environment and extremely curious about the world around them, including how things work, having intense interests, even passions, and oftentimes a gifted and talented student will not be interested in anything that's not an area of their passion. Having a long attention span and an excellent memory, which might mean being able to recall conversations that happened a long time ago, even as a very young child. For the long attention span, it could be a child very, very young, being able to sit there for hours solving a jigsaw puzzle when other students would have lost interest. Having excellent reasoning skills, being able to put together seemingly unrelated things. And having well-developed powers of abstraction, conceptualization, and synthesis, being able to solve problems and connect things that older children would usually be able to do. Additional common GT cognitive traits include quickly and easily seeing relationships in ideas, objects, or facts, elaborate and original thinking, excellent problem-solving skills, learning quickly and with less practice and repetition than other students might need, and having an unusual or vivid imagination. In addition to common cognitive traits, here are some common GT social and emotional traits. Being interested in philosophical and social issues, such as the environment and global warming. Being very sensitive, both emotionally and even physically, such as being very irritated by tags that are left in the clothing. Being concerned about fairness and injustice in the world. Being a perfectionist, which is actually a very common GT characteristic. Being overly energetic. Having a well-developed sense of humor, and even understanding jokes that are geared towards an older audience. Usually intrinsically motivated, meaning they might motivate themselves to achieve or to learn something as opposed to it coming from an external reward, and relating well to parents, teachers, and other adults. In fact, a lot of GT students prefer the company of adults over their peers. Only about 2.5% of the general population is actually considered gifted, so it's difficult for parents and teachers to tell whether a student that they work with or a child that they have at home is bright or actually gifted. So here's a chart that might be helpful in telling the difference between bright and gifted. On the left, we have characteristics of a student who might be bright, and on the right would be a similar characteristic, but how it relates to a child who might be actually gifted. Here are some examples. A bright student would raise their hand and usually know the answer to the question. A gifted student might be the one asking the question. A bright student is interested, while a gifted child is highly curious. A bright student is attentive and compliant, while a gifted student is highly involved. A bright student has good ideas, while a gifted student has wild, silly ideas. A bright student works hard and does what's expected of them. A gifted student might play around, and you think they're not learning, but when it comes time for testing, they test very well. A bright student answers the question and may be able to give you back exactly what they learned during the lesson, but a gifted student can discuss in detail and elaborate on their learning. A bright student might listen with interest, but a gifted student shows passion and strong feelings about what's being discussed. To learn, a bright student might need 6 to 8 repetitions to master the content, while a gifted student might need 1 to 2 repetitions to master the content. A bright student is alert, while a gifted student is keenly observant. A bright student completes their assignments on time and does what's expected, while a gifted student begins new projects that weren't even assigned. A bright student enjoys being at school, while a gifted student enjoys the process of learning. A bright child might grasp the meaning of something they're learning, while a gifted student can make connections between their learning and seemingly unrelated concepts. A bright student enjoys being around their peers, while a gifted student might enjoy being around adults. A bright student can copy accurately, while a gifted student might create a brand new design. GT services in San Elizario I.S.D. At the elementary grades, we have a weekly GT pullout taught by a GT teacher. Kindergarten kids are added to the GT pullout in the spring semester after they are identified. We have extracurricular clubs such as robotics and STEM. We offer differentiation of instruction in each class and subject throughout the student's day. We offer fun competitions and parent events, field trips, and the annual STEM Expo, which is held at the end of the year. At the high school level, services for GT students are different than they are for the earlier grade levels. As they get into high school, students are a lot more aware of what they're interested in, what their areas of passion are, and what they plan to do after they graduate from high school. So we allow them that flexibility to make lots of choices for themselves. Things that these students can do include being part of the early college high school, enrolling in career and technical education courses, becoming part of pre-AP, AP, and dual credit classes, joining organizations like Student Council, National Honor Society, or the many clubs that are available at the high school campus. And additionally, like the other campuses, we do offer field trips and various competitions specifically for our GT students. So how does a child get placed into GT services? It all starts with nominations that stem from knowing what gifted traits are.
Our process for GT nominations and testing is as follows. Students can be nominated for GT testing by their parents, peers, teachers, or they can nominate themselves. Nomination deadline is September 19th, 2025. The nomination form is found at the SEISD website at www.seisd.net. Once you're at the website, click Departments, then Curriculum and Instruction, then Gifted and Talented, and then finally the GT nomination form. Fill out the form, and once completed, you can drop off the form at the campus or you can email it to the campus GT coordinator.
On the screen, you'll see our GT coordinator contact information for this year. Please take a moment and notice who your GT coordinator is for your campus.
If you're a teacher and want to nominate one of your students for possible inclusion into the Gifted and Talented program, you may also download the teacher nomination form from the SEISD website. Please note that the deadline for submission to your GT coordinator of this nomination is September 19th, 2025. New for the 2025-2026 school year is GT Universal Screening for all second graders. Students will be administered the NNAT 3. A parent letter will be sent out in October advising them of the upcoming screener. The testing window for the screener is scheduled for November 4th through the 7th, 2025.
Once students are nominated, testing processes begin in the late fall and throughout the early spring semester. We use a variety of instruments such as the Torrance Test of Creativity, the Iowa Test, which looks at academic ability in reading and math, the COGAT test, which looks at nonverbal ability and reasoning skills. We also look at parent-teacher observations, work and writing samples, grades, and STAR scores for students who are in grades 4 and above.
In closing, this session has served as a review of common GT characteristics, programs, and services offered in our district. If you would like to nominate your student or your child, the parent or teacher GT nomination form is due by September 19th, 2025, and it is found on our district website. The form may be emailed, dropped off at the campus, or mailed. We hope to see a nomination from you this year. Thank you.